Wow, now that's wind. But you know what? I'm still heading out to the range today. I'm trying to accomplish a couple things. First, of course, is just to get some more practice with the Ruger precision rifle shooting in the wind. On that rifle, I've got my load figured out. I've calculated my trajectories at all different sorts of temperatures, but I've intentionally not shot in the wind so I can really see what the rifle and what the loads are doing. But at this point, I'm done working up my loads and I'm done shooting off the bench. It's time to get some practical experience in all different sorts of conditions. So this is a great opportunity to shoot this rifle in the wind. The second reason why I'm going out to the range is to do a little experiment, or might I say, do a little demonstration. All too often, I've heard people say, you know, there's a little bit of wind blowing, there's pretty decent wind blowing. They'll say, yeah, I don't think it's going to make too much of a difference with this bullet. Just go ahead and shoot dead on, hold dead on, right on the bullseye. Now the translation of what they really mean when they're saying that is, you know, I've never calculated any of my wind trajectories. I don't know anything about how this bullet is supposed to act in the wind. Therefore, I'm going to ignore it like it doesn't happen. I don't know anything about these crosswinds, headwinds, tailwinds, so I'm going to ignore it. Well, today I'm sure is one of those days of wind that no one's going to be ignoring. In fact, this is a fantastic opportunity because I can almost guarantee when I get out to the range, no one else will be out there. So I've got my Ruger precision rifle zeroed for 200 yards. I'm going to be shooting from the prone position in this wind. I want to hurry up and get out there because the weatherman says the winds are going to be dying down throughout the day. So, let's get going. First 5-shot group to the target in the upper right corner. Well, you'll notice I have that Kestrel anemometer, wind meter, off to my right side. And I've got it set to record or to show crosswind velocities. Now, one thing I noticed is that it's registering about 8, sometimes 9 miles per hour, but that's actually very low compared to the conditions that I'm seeing and the wind values that we're getting from the weather station out at the airport near here. So why is that? Is the Kestrel just not a good instrument? Well, not at all. Kestrels are very good. But notice the location of this Kestrel. I put it so I can see it and kind of monitor things, but it's actually protected. There's other shooting benches that are very close by, and that's the reason why we're getting kind of reduced wind velocity measurements. The other thing to understand is that when you have something like a Kestrel placed next to you, that is going to show you the wind velocity right at your firing location. But on a long-range shoot, and something farther than 200 yards that I'm doing today, that bullet is going to be climbing up into the air and encountering more wind than you're going to ever record next to you on the ground. And that's because the vegetation near the ground and all these other objects near the ground are attenuating or reducing the wind velocity. We've actually got another video all about this effect of wind on the bullet's trajectory through the air, and I'll post a link to that video in the comments or description below. Now, you might notice by listening to the wind on this video that the first 3 shots I'm firing was during essentially the highest winds that we're seeing this morning. The next 2 shots were taken when the wind clearly reduced in velocity. And we're seeing that effect in the shot placements. The first 3 shots flew the farthest to the left. The following 2 shots not quite too far, or not quite as far from the bullseye. Do you also notice how those first 3 shots not only flew to the left, but were also higher than the other 2 shots? That effect, clearly demonstrated by this video, is what's called the Bernoulli effect. So when you have a wind coming from the 3 o'clock position like we have today, that bullet is not only going to fly to the left, or toward the 9 o'clock position, let's say, but it's also going to fly higher. That has all to do with the right hand twist on our rifles and the spin imparted to our rifle bullets. All right, so that's pretty much a wrap, but let's recap. The first few shots that I fired grouped pretty well, but they were 5.5 inches to the left. And when I back calculate the wind velocities, that comes up to a 18.6 mile per hour wind. The next couple of rounds weren't displaced quite as far to the left. Again, back calculating this, that means I had a 13.5 mile per hour wind when I was shooting those rounds. Now the best scenario for long range shooting or precision shooting in the wind is to do it in pairs. And what I mean by that is you are the shooter and you have someone else spotting for you. Now this is a technique that the military uses and other organizations, other people use all the time. And it's a good technique because you got that one person who's spotting for you. They're going to be higher up, watching through a spotting scope, watching the wind, feeling the wind, maybe watching a Kestrel that's also mounted higher up to catch a more true wind velocity. And if at all possible, you might have some flags out on a shooting range. A lot of shooting ranges have that. That's fantastic to watch that sort of stuff. Because what I've seen is that you may even have a 3 to 9 crosswind at your position, but farther out, that wind could completely change and actually swirl back 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock sort of thing. Now, if you are shooting by yourself, I think one of the best things that you can do is set out some flags. Get a reading from a Kestrel. Oftentimes I'll actually stand up a little ways away from the kind of protected shooting bays that so many people have, so many ranges have. And I'll put that Kestrel out about shoulder height, even a little bit higher, especially if I'm shooting longer ranges still. And I'll get a reading for what that wind is, kind of make a mental note about how that feels. And then from that point on, I'll be watching my, my wind flags that are out. So there we have it. Wind and the Ruger precision rifle. Oh, it's not anything that can't be overcome, but you can't ignore it. Thanks for watching.